3 sinister, spine-chilling stories of haunting isolation you must discover on a rainy night. Sarah sat on her porch, the rain tapping like fingers against the roof, a deep, haunting rhythm that usually wrapped her in comfort. Tonight, however, dread crawled inside her, a creeping unease that twisted with the shadows stretching along her lawn. The porch light flickered ominously, casting eerie shapes that danced just beyond the pages of her book. She felt it in her bones. Something was wrong. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the world for a heartbeat. The rain poured down in torrents, muffling sounds, but leaving whispers that hung just out of reach, teasing her senses. It wasn't the first storm she had braved as a single mother, but this felt different, darker. The air buzzed with an electricity that felt like a warning. Moments later, a bright figure stumbled into view, the outline of her son, Jack, emerging through the downpour, his laughter strange against the storm. He sloshed toward her, those once familiar sounds now echoing like taunts. "You won't believe what happened, Mom!" he exclaimed, breathless. As he caught his breath, he recounted a tale of a good Samaritan on the bus, an odd man with bothersome questions about their home life. He just wouldn't stop asking. Jack's laughter faded, his eyes danced with unease, mirroring Sarah's tight chest and clenched fists. She shook her head dismissively, believing it to be an overactive imagination, just another horror movie lingering in her thoughts. The thunder rumbled, low and oppressive, and dark clouds seemed to wrap around their house. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, leaving them in a suffocating blackness. Jack's phone buzzed violently on the table, sending chills racing down Sarah's spine. She reached for it, hoping to find some logical explanation, but the messages on the screen made her stomach drop. An unknown number, chillingly precise, hit with unnerving personal details. "I see you. I know who you are." Panic flooded her senses. The safe haven she thought she had created morphed into a cage. Their neighbors, the faces she once trusted, now looked through her like ghosts, shadows darting through the windows, eyes dark with secrets. She felt completely exposed, raw. "Mom, I'm scared," Jack whispered, fear cracking his voice. He gripped her arm, and their shared panic melded into a protective instinct. Sarah's heart raced, an alarming drum against the silence, both a glimmer of hope and a warning. Before they could solidify their fears, a loud knock shattered the stillness, a hammering that knew no time, no courtesy of hour. Heart in her throat, Sarah edged toward the door, cautious. Through the people, she recognized a local official, a man she had waved to, someone who held a friendly smile that now felt sharply sinister. "I'm here to help," he said, but his words dripped with unsettling undertones that set every instinct on high alert. A pause hung heavy. Jack squeezed her arm tighter. Echoes of past safety slipped from her grasp. The storm raged outside, and the walls closed in as they braced against the unknown lurking beyond their flimsy door. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Glimmers of hope faded. Fear clawed at her insides, and as the rain intensified, swirling in a wild dance, thoughts of escape became elusive. Santa and Jack shared quick breaths, adrenaline coursing through them. They prepared for a confrontation, for whatever the night had in store. The next knock could unveil their darkest fears, or perhaps the unsettling truth that safety and isolation might have been nothing more than a delusion. The relentless rain pounded, masking the echoes of secrets kept too long, and they knew dawn could break with more than just light. The knocking grew louder, a rhythmic battering that sent jolts of fear through Sarah's body. "What do we do?" Jack's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. She couldn't have answered if she tried. Her mind raced, searching for a solution that didn't come. "Just stay quiet," she managed, clamping a hand over his mouth, feeling the soft warmth of his breath against her palm. The knocking ceased, replaced by the sound of dragging footsteps, heavy, methodical, creeping closer. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs like a creature trying to escape. The dread coiled tighter around them, her instincts shrieking that something was terribly wrong. She glanced around the darkened living room, where shadows seemed to stretch longer, darker. Something moved outside. Not just the trees. No, there was a figure standing at the edge of the porch, silhouetted against the flickering light. "Mom?" Jack asked, his voice quivering with each syllable as he gripped her hand tighter. Through the fear, Sarah felt a fierce protectiveness consumes her. Whatever this was, she wouldn't let it take her son. "Stay here," she hissed, more to himself than to him. She felt like a woman on a tightrope, balancing between courage and terror, inching her way to the door. Each step felt like molasses, dragging her mind through visions of what lay on the other side. An ambusher, a predator lurked just beyond the timber. When she finally reached the door, her hand hovered over the knob, pulse roaring in her ears. The figure lingered, just outside of sight, but close enough to send terror curling in her gut.
"I'm here to help," the man's voice echoed in her mind, a taunt as grotesque as the darkness surrounding them. Then, without warning, the handle rattled violently. "Sarah, open the door!" A familiar voice, warped and hurried, clawed at her ears. Ed, her neighbor. Panic surged to new heights. Why was he out there? Why the urgency? "Sarah, I don't have time!" The urgency in his voice snapped her resolve. Her instinct screamed danger, but then again, who else could she trust? "Mom, please." Jack's tears were hot against her skin now, and that just fueled her need to protect him. She turned back to him, weighing the situation in the cold steel of reality. "Just stay behind me," she whispered, facing the door, uncertainty coursing through her veins. The moment felt like eternity, every heartbeat echoing dread. With a deep breath, she turned the knob and pulled the door wide. The night rushed in, the storm encased them in a storm of jagged shadows. But Ed's face brought little comfort. His eyes were wide and wild, glistening with fear. "They're coming. You have to listen." "What's happening?" Sarah asked, confusion slicing through the suffocating air. "You won't believe it, but it's happening again. People are missing. They're targeting your family. We have to leave, now!" Before she could process his words, something behind him caught her eye. A flicker, movement, the shadow of that stranger growing larger. "Get inside!" she screamed, shoving Jack back as she felt the icy grip of raw panic. Ed stumbled in, locking the door behind him just as that dark figure lunged forward, clawing desperately at the door, a twisted, sinuous hand reaching for them. "Don't let them in! They can't come inside!" Ed shouted, breath heaving, eyes darting to the windows, sensing the danger encircling their home, a predator tracking its prey. The storm roared, a tempest of grief and confusion enveloping them. They huddled, waiting for the inevitable clash of shadows and light. They knew that something lurked outside, something that sought to break the barrier they had constructed with hope and fear. The night held madness, and behind them, the door wouldn't hold forever. "Mom, what do we do?" Jack shrieked, braced against her side, eyes darting toward the chilling sound of the figure tearing at their last sanctuary. And then the lights flickered, dimmed, and the laughter of the storm blended with the laughter of someone who knew them all too well, twisting the air with a premonition of their worst nightmares waiting to unfold. But as Sarah's mind raced in spirals of dread, the truth dawned. The real terror wasn't just outside, but within. What lurked in the shadows wasn't always the enemy, but something much more sinister. And as the darkness crept closer, she grappled with her next step, uncertain if salvation existed at all. Was it too late to change their fate? The cacophony of the storm masked their heartbeats, but not the dread that hung heavy in the air. A mad symphony of rain and wind thrummed through the old house, making the very walls seem alive, pulsing with an unsettling energy. "Sarah, focus! We need a plan. It's going to get worse!" Ed's voice broke through the chaos, a lifeline that felt frayed at the edges. He was pacing, glancing nervously at the windows, the flickering light casting erratic shadows across his face. "Stop! We need to barricade the door," she said, urgency propelling her. Jack trembled beside her, his small body pressing against her hip. She shifted him slightly, steadying him with a gentle squeeze, trying to impart courage even as her own faltered. "Mom?" Jack whispered, eyes wide and glistening. They didn't have time to soften the words. They needed action. All she could manage was a nod. Together, they pushed the couch against the door, its weight barely sufficient against the unseen force pressing from the other side. As Ed joined them, they heaved against it, muscles straining, breaths rapid in the thickening tension. With every scraping sound outside, shadows danced menacingly in the corners of the room. "We have to make sure the windows are locked." Ed dashed away toward the nearest window, and Sarah felt a surge of alarm. "No," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "Don't separate." "Just cover me," he shot back, brushing her hand away, and she knew he was right. They couldn't afford to let anything slip through. Jack's whimper echoed in the cold air, and she turned to him, her heart tearing. "Stay close to me, okay? We'll keep each other safe." He nodded, clutching his stuffed dinosaur like a shield. As Ed secured the window, an animalistic sound broke the night, a guttural growl, primal and chilling. It came again, closer this time, resonating through the wood like a warning. Ed froze, eyes wide and wild, before spinning to face them. "We have to move now." "Where?" Sarah's voice cracked, fear tightening her throat as she stumbled back against the barricade, her mind spiraling. "Okay, we go." She took Jack's hand, feeling it tremble in her grip. The way he looked up at her, scared but trusting, sent a stab of guilt through her heart. She'd promised to protect him, but here they were, fleeing into darkness. As they raced up the stairs, the shadows shifted ominously, the air thick with despair and foreboding. The landing creaked under their hurried steps, and every window appeared like a gaping maw ready to swallow them whole. Once in the bedroom, they shoved the door closed, the heavy thud echoing through the gloom. Sarah backed against it, breathless, cradling Jack against her, as panic coursed through her veins. "Did we lose them?"
Jack asked, voice small, strained. Before she could respond, the door rattled violently, a harrowing thud shaking the frame. "Sarah, they're here!" Ed's frantic voice cracked as he braced against the door. "They're trying to get in!" The panic surged again, threatening to swallow her whole. Holding Jack tighter, she glanced around the dimly lit room. It felt claustrophobic, the shadows closing in. A glimpse of her own reflection in the mirror sent ice through her. Her face was a mask of desperation. "Mom, what's that?" Jack's voice trembled, pointing toward the closet. A darkness moved there, a shudder within the shadows that made her breath freeze in her throat. "Stay back!" she yelled, and Ed turned just in time, eyes bulging, as the closet door swung open with a creak, revealing nothing but deep shadows, but still holding a sense of something lurking inside. "We need to defend ourselves," Ed shouted over the rattling door. "If they burst in, we haven't a chance." Before she could disagree, the door splintered, a sickening crack reverberating through the room. The barrier was weakening. "What do we do?" Jack cried, eyes wide in terror. A chilling laugh cut through the air, high-pitched and taut, echoing around them like a taunt. The sound curled into Sarah's mind, a mocking of her fears, and echoed back from the depths of her own memories. As they faced the darkened closet, shadows crawling toward them, Sarah's heart raced. What else had they unleashed by trying to escape? And then, just as the door splintered again, she realized, what if the true horror was waiting inside, ready to awaken? Could they escape it at all? The door shook like a creature in thrall, desperate to break free. Splinters exploded around the frame with each thud, and Sarah felt the weight of the world collapsing in on her. Her heart hammered in her chest, every beat a deafening reminder of the terror that pursued them. "Ed, think of something," she cried, her voice tight with stress. "I'm trying, just hold the door," he shouted, panic rising in his throat. Sarah could feel his fear wrap around them, thick like fog. As Jack whimpered beside her, the echo of that haunting laugh lingered, twisting through her mind like a snake. In the corner of the room, the shadows within the closet pulsed and flickered, restless and hungry. What if it's not just the storm, she thought. What if that noise wasn't the storm? The ripping sound of wood promised imminent danger, feeding the dark shadows creeping toward them. The stillness was deceiving, the walls closing in like a vice. "Jack, stay behind me," Ed commanded, as he brandished a broken lamp like a crude weapon. "If they get in, we fight." Fear gripped Sarah as never before. But what do we fight? She thought wildly. Her next breath felt hard, jagged like glass. The closet door seemed to breathe heavily, as if it were preparing to exhale something monstrous.
The door splintered again, a jagged crack splitting through the wood. With a final thunderous boom, the door burst open, swinging wide as the creeping shadows spilled into the room, thick and alive like a living nightmare. "Run!" Ed yelled, but the word barely left his lips before the darkness surged forward, tendrils of shadow reaching out like elongated fingers. Sarah grabbed Jack tightly, dashing towards the window, adrenaline surging through her veins. But as they reached it, jagged glass glinted in the flickering light. They were trapped in a room that transformed into a prison. The shadows cascaded around them, howling and slithering like a congregation of lost souls. "Ed, we can't go that way," Sarah shouted, desperation flooding her words. "Craney, the only way out is through that thing." "It's not a thing," Jack cried, trembling. "It's a monster." The shadow writhed, twisting into a grotesque form, mismatched eyes glinting in their haunted glow. Each blink seemed to absorb something more of their reality, converting their anguish into palpable energy. "No, no," Sarah whispered, desperate memories flashing through her mind, old stories of demons and haunted pasts, fully materialized before her very eyes. Suddenly, the monster lunged, a shadowy maw snapping open wide as it lunged toward them. Ed swung the lamp, but it passed right through. The shadow evaporated and reformed, laughing that terrible laughter, an echo of despair that swallowed any flicker of hope. They stumbled back, pressing against the window frame, and Sarah felt the cold seep into her bones. "We need to get out," she insisted, once more looking at the closet door. "What about the closet?" Ed questioned, fear lacing his voice. "Maybe it holds the way out," Sarah argued, gripping Jack tighter as she edged towards it. The monster's laughter surged around them, and she began to grasp the truth. The darkness wanted something far more sinister than just fear. It wanted their very essence. As they inched closer to the closet, the shadows swirled alarmingly, rising up to meet them, an impenetrable wall of evil closing in. "What if something worse is in there?" Ed said, uncertainty flickering across his features. "Well, we don't stay here to find out," she shouted back. But before they could reach the closet, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the walls vibrated. What if they had to confront not just the darkness, but whatever lay within the closet to survive it all? The choice hung heavy in the air, whether to dive into the unknown or to face the snarling terror pressing from behind. With a sudden burst of determination, Sarah took a step forward, gaze fixed on the closet as their breaths mingled with the storm. "Together," she whispered to Ed and Jack, "on 3, 1, 2. But just as she started to count, the laughter transformed into a spine-chilling whisper, and the shadows began to split, revealing what lay beneath.
They had to decide, but what awaited them was not a simple answer. Would they discover a way out, or unleash even greater darkness? The shadows recoiled, parting like dark curtains, unveiling a grotesque scene. A chill swept through the room, permeating into Sarah's bones, freezing her thoughts. The air thickened, coiling tight around her throat as she struggled to catch her breath. "What is happening?" Ed's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. His grip on the lamp tightened, knuckles white in the dim light. "Jack!" Sarah turned to the boy, who stared wide-eyed at the gap forming in the shadows. "Stay close," she urged, forcing herself to sound steady. From the parted darkness, a low growl rumbled, an unholy sound that vibrated in the very core of the room. Sarah dared to peer through the splintered shadows. A pair of glowing eyes gazed back at them, a promise of unspeakable horrors lurking just beyond the veil. "Maybe we'll find something useful," Ed suggested, though his resolve wavered. They had long passed the point of no return. There was no choice left. If they stood and fought, the monster behind them would consume them. If they fled into the closet, an unknown terror awaited. In a futile attempt to analyze the situation, Sarah clawed through the tumbling thoughts racing through her mind. She was desperate, battling that horrific laugh echoing like a taunt in the corners of her memory. "It can't be worse than this," she thought. Ed nodded, taking a deep breath. "Together," he affirmed. They stepped forward as one, Jack sandwiched between them, their journey to the unknown marred by suffocating fear. Each step echoed like a death knell. Every footfall felt like an unsettling invitation to plunge deep into darkness. With crushing trepidation, they stepped into the gaping maw of the closet. Instantly, the world behind them faded into an abyss of sound and light. It felt like being swallowed whole, the closet enveloping them, pulling them into an oppressive silence. "Switch on the flashlight," Ed's voice cut through the void, the urgency palpable. "Right." Sarah fumbled in her pocket, fingers trembling as she flicked it on. A beam of light shot through the cold, encroaching darkness, revealing disarrayed clothing draping off hangers like the heavy specters of the past. "We're still in here," Jack whispered, fear lacing his words. "What if it is worse?" As shadows flitted in the edges of the light, Sarah scanned their surroundings, but then an unnatural chill passed through her, so cold it sliced into her skin. The moment felt wrong, off-kilter, as if something unseen was watching them, waiting. The closet seemed to stretch impossibly long, a tunnel of unending despair. She felt something shift in the air, a rustle like dry leaves stirred by a sinister breeze. The story she'd known as a child rushed back. Things hide in closets, she recalled, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Look," Ed pointed ahead. At the far end of the closet, something stirred. A shadow detached from the wall and began to morph, reshaping into a familiar figure, head cocked unnaturally as it grinned with twisted delight. Its eyes were the pits of black voids, sucking in the light. "Is that—" Sarah's voice faltered. The apparition stepped closer. Tattered remnants of a long-forgotten garment clung to its frail form, writhing like the shadows surrounding it. It chuckled, a horrific sound that chilled Sarah's blood. "Do you remember me?" it whispered, each syllable dripping with malice. As recognition struck them, horror washed over Sarah. This wasn't just any monster, it was one of her past, a haunting phantasm that had once taken on flesh in her childhood nightmares. The implications clawed at her, the taste of dread blossoming like poison beneath her tongue. "No," she gasped, stumbling back. "You can't be real." "We're all real here," the specter hissed, eyes widening in malevolence as the darkness pulsed with life. In that heartbeat, she understood, they weren't alone, and it wasn't just the shadows closing in, it was anything but. They had unleashed something that continued to draw closer, an amalgamation of fears and terrors carved from their very essence. "Run!" Ed shouted, instinct taking over, but it was already too late. The shadows consumed them, laughing as the closet door slammed shut with a finality that echoed for miles. As their surroundings became nothing more than a suffocating cloak of night, a chilling realization settled like ice within Sarah. The darkness didn't only want them, it hungered for their every memory, every fear. With one final scream swallowed by the void, they were gone, leaving no trace behind. But in the back of their minds, something flickered. Something had been unleashed. What if the true horror wasn't what lay within the darkness, but what they had brought with them? The darkness pressed in tightly around them, an entity, a living thing. Each breath felt like a battle against the thick air that wrapped around their throats, squeezing tighter, suffocating. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage like a caged animal desperate to escape. "We need to find a way out," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ed nodded, eyes wide, the beam from the flashlight flickering, a heartbeat caught in the throes of panic. Jack clutched onto Sarah's arm, his skin clammy, the weight of his fear palpable. The laughing shadows encircled them, weaving through the fabric of the closet, distorting the clothing into grotesque figures, shifting and writhing. Clothes hung like gaping mouths, threatening to swallow them whole. She realized with a jolt that they needed to keep moving. This nightmare was alive, and it fed on their fear. Sarah turned and ran down the elongated rows of jumbled garments, Ed and Jack following close behind. Their footfalls echoed dully, swallowed by the void around them. "We can't let it get into our heads."
"Ed!" shouted, desperation spilling over into his words. He had to believe this. They all had to. But ahead, the shadows morphed again, elongating into another grim figure. This one, wreathed in darkness, looked vaguely like a man, yet it was warped, its face a horrific blend of familiar and foreign. It grinned, its smile far too wide, revealing teeth sharper than they had any right to be. "Sarah," it crooned, a voice like silk wrapped around broken glass. "You've brought friends. How delightful." She stumbled, her instinct screaming a warning to get away, but where? The walls of the closet seemed to press tighter, the hallway narrowing as the specter moved closer, gliding rather than walking, a predator drawn to its prey. "Don't look at it!" Jack shouted, his voice breaking. But the curious, insatiable part of Sarah peeked through her terror. The face was familiar, etched in memories long buried. Those eyes, that horrific smile. It was someone she used to know, someone she once loved. "Why are you doing this?" she gasped, the question slipping out like a breath of icy air. "We just want to leave." "Aren't you already home?" the specter purred, the laughter in its voice like shattering glass. "You've brought your fears to me, your memories, a banquet laid bare." "Keep moving!" Ed yelled again, driving the words through the air like stakes through a heart. They surged forward, desperate, but the shadows reeled back, laughing, as if toying with them. The flashlight flickered again, sputtering. Just as it was about to die, it illuminated a door at the end of the closet, a narrow exit that seemed to pulse with the promise of freedom. "Over there!" Sarah shouted, pointing, terror sharpening her focus. They surged toward the door, but the shadows clawed at their heels, a cacophony of laughter ringing in their ears. As they reached for the handle, a cold wind surged around them, howling with fury. A shadow lunged, its large hands grasping for them. Jack shrieked, the sound piercing the heavy air, and Sarah felt icy fingers brush against her ankle, sending a bolt of panic racing through her spine. Ed flung the door open, and what lay beyond was not the light she craved, but a swirling mist. The closet had transformed into a chasm, stretching into infinite blackness. "Jump!" he yelled, his voice filled with an urgent, hysterical edge. The sound of their hearts thumping against their chests filled the space between them as they leaped into the void, the door slamming shut behind them with a bone-rattling thud.
They landed with a jarring thump, disoriented. It wasn't the familiar comfort of home, but instead a nightmare manifestation of all they tried to flee from. Shadows lurked everywhere, and faint whispers echoed around them, soft, taunting. "What have we done?" Sarah murmured, realizing they had jumped into something far worse. A sinister figure emerged from the gloom, laughter rising like smoke, spiraling into the air.
It clawed at the edges of her sanity, igniting the shadows lurking in the recesses of her mind. Panic bubbled as she recalled the darkness did not just want their memories, it wanted their essence. And then a realization struck like lightning. Escaping their tragic past may have led them here, but every decision held weight. Jack trembled beside her, his face pale, and she could see the terror mirrored in Ed's wide eyes. Together, they needed to confront this. But how? "Is there a way back?" Ed whispered, barely able to form the words. The dark figure stepped closer, its face obscured, a semblance of who they once had known. "There is always a way back," it hissed, "but it comes at a price, and I accept cash in fear." With dread pooling in her stomach, Sarah's thoughts spiraled. How could they escape this new reality they had unwittingly birthed? In the distance, the laughs circled, relentless and hungry, and something deep inside Sarah began to quake. How far would they have to go to reclaim their lives, and at what cost would it come? What if the shadows were only the beginning? What infamous horror still lay waiting in the dark? The shadows slithered closer, a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to merge with the whispers echoing in the mist. Sarah's heart staggered in her chest, a relentless drumbeat warning her of impending doom. The face of the figure shifted, morphing into the familiar visage of an old friend, twisted by malice and mockery. "Why run from the past?" it taunted, the voice echoing like a distant memory. "You've brought your brokenness here. Isn't it lovely?" "No," Jack screamed, his voice cracking. "You're not real." But even as he spoke, Sarah felt the grip of despair tightening around her. The shadows gathered, engulfing them, pushing back against their will to move. They were trapped in this new hell, past sins manifesting as monstrous shapes. "Fear is the only truth here," the figure sneered, stepping closer until it was almost touching. "And I am that truth. You wanted to escape, but you can never truly escape yourself." "Shut up!" Ed shouted, swinging his flashlight wildly, the weak beam flickering against the shadows. But darkness seemed to soak up the light, laughing in response to his feeble attempts. Now, the figure cooed, weaving through the silence like a deadly dance. "You'll find no salvation here, only revelation." Sarah's spine chilled as she felt an icy breath brush against the nape of her neck, sending tremors through her body. This presence knew her, knew all of them. Their deepest fears lay bare before it like a banquet, as it had said. "Let's play a game," it suggested, eyes gleaming with a sinister delight. A simple choice: face your fears and learn, or succumb to despair. The ground shifted beneath their feet, turning to a hazy abyss that swirled with dizzying colors, as if the air itself was alive and pulsating with energy.
Sarah stumbled back, clutching Jack's arm, trying to pull him away from the malevolence, even as it lured them in. "Remember your childhood," the figure said, grinning wider. "All those nights spent hiding, waiting for the monster to come out. That monster is here now, and it's waiting for you to let it in." "Not true," Jack gasped, terror etching deeper into his features. "We're not kids anymore." "Are you so sure?" The figure's voice dropped an octave, a whisper woven into chilling fabric. "I see the child in you still, the one who believes in monsters." The laughter echoed through the mists, a blend of despair and amusement, and Sarah felt her sanity fraying. Doubt clawed at her. Could they fight what they'd suppressed for so long? Jack would break before this thing that knew them inside out. The corners of memories long buried began to surface, old fears, regrets, and failures. "How far are you willing to go?" It beckoned, raising a skeletal hand. "Would you trade your hopes for a moment of freedom?" "What freedom?" Ed shouted defiantly, but his voice wavered. "Freedom from choice," it breathed, sensing their hesitation.
It is not too late to forget. Suddenly, the mist condensed, swirling violently until it coalesced into a series of nightmarish forms, faces from their past, filled with agony. Sarah gasped as she recognized her old fears, manifestations poised to consume her spirit. Ed stood frozen, the weight of dread pulling him deeper into despair's embrace. Jack trembled, his eyes darting among the shadows, searching for an escape that felt increasingly impossible. "Choose wisely," their tormentor whispered. "Your final chance awaits." In that moment, a profound sense of urgency overtook Sarah. They had to act or risk being swallowed whole by this depthless horror. "What if we don't play?" she asked, her voice shaking but louder now. "What if we refuse to give you our fears?" The figure hesitated, glancing between them, curiosity flickering in its ghastly eyes. "Interesting," it said, tilting its head as if pondering a new strategy. "Stubbornness can also be delicious." As shadows began to close in again, Sarah felt a surge of hope mingled with terror. Every breath fueled her courage. "Together," she shouted, "we are not alone." The figure hesitated, its glee turning to confusion as the shadows pulsed, hesitating in their advance. But was it enough? A chilling wind whipped around them, warping reality again, and Sarah sensed that true danger loomed just ahead. What awaited them in this unending maelstrom? Would their united front be strong enough, or was this just the prelude to an even greater nightmare? The darkness seemed to listen, biding its time. All they could do now was press forward into the unknown. What other horrors awaited in the depths where their pasts entwined with the present? The air thickened, each breath heavy with the malevolence surrounding them. Shadows twisted, dancing with a life of their own, and Sarah felt the very ground beneath her shift like a living creature, ready to consume her whole. "Stay close," Jack urged, pulling her tighter against him, his voice strained. They stumbled deeper into the maw of the darkness. Behind them, a low growl emanated from the shadows, a warning or a promise she couldn't tell. "Where do we go?" Ed shouted, panic starting to seep into his words. The flashlight flickered again, its light growing weaker, consumed by the shadows it attempted to illuminate. "There has to be a way out." The figure loomed nearby, a dark silhouette against an even darker backdrop. "Why do you seek an escape? The abyss welcomes all who linger at the edges of fear." It swayed, its voice slithering through the air like a serpent, chilling and enchanting. "I said shut up," Jack shouted defiantly, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his resolve. The figure grinned, reveling in their uncertainty. "Ah, little Jack, so brave yet so afraid," it taunted. "You think you know the path away from pain, but the path is littered with your failures. It's where you truly belong." Sarah felt her skin crawl. It was right. Their past was not just a collection of memories. It was a nightmare waiting to unfurl. Each failure, each regret felt tangible in the air, like the remnants of old battles refusing to let go. "Listen to me," Sarah shouted, trying to pierce the haze of despair enveloping them. "We can face our fears together." "Together?" the figure echoed, almost mocking her. "You are but fragments of what you once were. Look around you." A swirling vortex erupted from the shadows, revealing faces, anguished and distorted. They were their past selves, the childhood versions, the broken adolescents. The truth clawed at Sarah's heart. They were still those scared kids hiding under beds, avoiding the monsters lurking beyond the safety of the sheets. "Hiding won't protect you anymore," the figure mused, its eyes flickering with malicious glee. "You must confront your monsters, or become them." Ed staggered back, his breath coming in short gasps. I can't do this," he stammered, the light in his flashlight flickering more violently now. "Then you will be swallowed whole," the figure hissed, lunging forward. A surge of darkness burst from it, coiling around Ed like a snake, binding his limbs in shadows. "Ed!" Sarah screamed, reaching for him, but the darkness pulled him deeper, shadows feasting on his cries, consuming him piece by piece. "Let him go," Jack shouted, desperation cracking his voice. With every ounce of strength, he strained against the gloom, but the more they fought, the tighter the shadows wrapped around them. "Fear not, dear friends," the figure whispered, voice dripping with darkness.
You can still save him if you don't mind shedding your own skin. What do you mean? Sarah asked, feeling the chill of dread seep in her bones. What do we have to do?
Only face the truth, it said, its laughter a cold echo. Face the monsters you've hidden for too long, and take them for yourselves. Never, Jack yelled. You can't make us. But its laughter only grew, wrapping around them, suffocating their resolve. As Ed's cries faded into oblivion, Sarah felt the gnawing sensation of despair creeping back in. The others' faces twisted with fear, but she knew they couldn't give in. They had to fight. "Remember who we are," she shouted against the shadows, voice breaking but fierce. "We can't let it win." The ground trembled beneath them as her words ignited a spark of rebellion. The shadows quivered, momentarily reeling from the power behind her declaration. But would this newfound courage be enough to unleash the truth buried within their nightmares? Would they emerge victorious or be trapped in an endless cycle of despair and haunting? With dangers lurking just beneath the surface, an unanswered question hung in the air. How many secrets lay hidden in the darkness? As the last remnants of Ed's cries faded, Sarah felt the weight of their choices crash down upon her. Would they finally face their fears, or would they fall deeper into the abyss? The shadows danced closer, hungry for their dread, as time ebbed away. The shadows surged, ravenous and wild, swirling around Sarah and Jack like dark fingers searching for purchase. The deeper they were pulled, the more frayed her heartstrings became. Ed was gone, swallowed whole without a trace, leaving only a hollow echo of desperation. "Jack, we have to move," her voice sliced through the darkness, but it felt weak, like an ember struggling against an unforgiving storm. "Move where?" Jack's eyes darted around, wide with terror. "It's everywhere." "Focus. We need to find a way to confront it. That's the only choice we have left." She grabbed his shoulders, grounding him, trying to bring him back from the precipice of panic. Suddenly, the shadowy figure reappeared, the disturbance in the air making their instincts scream to flee. "Ah, the brave little duo," it cooed, voice dripping with amusement. "You think charging forward without understanding will save you?" "What do you know about us?" Jack spat, voice trembling with both rage and fear. "I know everything." The figure's grin widened, revealing teeth that shimmered like knives. Sarah felt her breath catch. The implications thundered in her mind. "I refuse to let you turn us against each other," she shouted. "Foolish girl," it hissed, lunging closer, shadows fizzing at the edges like smoke. "You must confront the very essence of your nightmares to release Ed. But be warned, the truth may swallow you whole." A sensation, crawling dread, spread through Sarah. Shadows writhed in recognition of her past failures. Faces, a blur of betrayal, hurt, guilt, swirled in her mind. Each memory tied to regret threatened to engulf her, arrayed like monsters waiting just out of sight. "Jack," she whispered, panic sharpening her senses. "We have to face them. We can't let them consume us. The longer we delay, the stronger the shadows become." "You want me to confront the thing that terrifies me the most?" Jack's voice cracked, every syllable soaked in doubt. But beneath the terror, she sensed something else, resolve. It flickered weakly, like a candle fighting against a gale. A figure, long and hazy, emerged from the shadows, dragging chains that rattled and clinked eerily. Each link seemed to echo their shared history, an omen of all their failures. Sarah felt her heart race. "Jack, this is ours to face. With each step into the darkness, we defy them." She pulled him forward. Together, they ventured into the depths, one shaky step at a time. With every stride, the memories crystallized into forms, phantoms that loomed brighter, clearer. Was that the kid who betrayed them at summer camp? The friend they abandoned without a thought? And more chilling still, the faces of those they couldn't save, those haunted by secrets they hid within. "Stop!" Jack shouted suddenly, fear taut in his voice. The memories, they're not mine. They can't be real." "Face it, Jack. They are you. They are us. We gave them power when we ran away." She gripped his arm, clinging to hope. "If we don't confront them, they'll drag us down into the dark." The shadows writhed angrily, drawing closer as they pressed onward. A deafening silence fell.
vibrating with palpable fear and impending doom that threatened to swallow their resolve whole. Together, Sarah reminded him, voice quaking. Nothing could tear them apart at this moment, not even the shadows. They had to cling to one another, to the fragile thread of their bond. But as the darkness pressed tighter, a cold realization struck her. If they weren't done fighting their fears, what would happen when their pasts caught up to them? Would all hope wither and die as the truth bared its teeth? Remember this, the twisted figure mocked as they neared. What lies ahead may not just reveal who you are, but who you truly fear to become. With every step, they teetered closer to the edge, forced to confront not just their past failures, but the monsters embedded in their souls. Could they face their truths, or would they succumb to the very shadows they sought to escape? A chilling scream echoed in the darkness, a sound so haunting it could shatter souls. It was a reminder that time was not on their side. Would they break free of the chains, or would they fall into oblivion like Ed, lost forever? The shadows grew thick, swirling with an insatiable hunger that wrapped around Sarah and Jack like a shroud. Dread clenched at Sarah's heart, echoing like a warning bell. She turned to Jack, his small face pale with fear, yet within those frightened eyes, a spark flickered, defiance. This is our moment,
she said, forcing strength into her voice. We can't let the darkness win. We know these faces. They are our fears. If we embrace them, we can break their hold. Jack nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his eyes. They stepped forward together, each footfall resonating with the beating of their hearts, a steady drum of human resilience. The specter loomed closer, its monstrous grin widening, lips curling back to reveal teeth that glinted like shards of ice. Ah, look who's getting brave, it jeered, weaving its way through the shadows, arms outstretched, claws poised to claw at their deepest insecurities. You think you can confront me? All those times you hid from the truth, now you'll face the consequences. We're not afraid of you, Jack shouted, voice trembling yet fierce. You're just a part of us. You can't control us anymore. Such sweet defiance, the specter drawled. But let's see how courageous you truly are. The darkness flickered around them, shapes emerging, clawing their way back into focus, figures from their past twisted in pain, regrets and failures standing in judgment. Every choice they wished to forget crystallized into forms, demanding recognition. Jack, Sarah murmured, squeezing his hand tighter, fingers clasping like a lifeline. Remember why we quit running. All at once, a flood of memories crashed down on them, guilt, betrayal, moments of weakness. But alongside those memories surfaced some they had not expected. Flickers of joy, laughter shared, battles fought together. Each moment supported them, urging them forward. Those are parts of us, Jack whispered, eyes narrowing against the flood of emotions. They don't have to define us. Yes, Sarah felt a rush of courage. We own these memories. They're ours, both light and dark. This is what we need, our truth to set us free. The shadows hesitated, eyes narrowing as if contemplating their determination. In that pause, a breath of hope fluttered around them. Sarah and Jack stepped forward firmly, their fears no longer overpowering them, but standing as witnesses of their journey. The ghostly figure recoiled, the shadows shrinking, the sinister laughter fading. You think you've won? You think acceptance makes you stronger? It spat, dark fury twisting its features. You'll carry these chains forever. Maybe we will, Jack replied fiercely, but they won't bind us. We forge our own path. With that declaration, a light began to pulse from their intertwined hands. It shattered the grasp of the shadows, sending a tremor through the void. The whispers transformed to songs of hope, a harmony of all they had endured, echoing against the walls of despair. We can step into the light, Sarah called out, intensity infusing every syllable. We don't fight alone. We have each other. Their shared strength ignited a blazing light that surged forth, illuminating the room, pushing back against the darkness. Its edges sizzled like fire against water, and the figure hissed in agony, its form flickering as if caught in a tempest. The growls gave way to desperate cries, losing their grip as warmth flooded in. They were tearing through the fabric of fear, transcending their pasts, reclaiming their agency. "Together!" they called, each heartbeat synchronizing with each shout. "Together!" In that instant, a brilliant light erupted around them, breaking through layers of suffocating darkness. The shadows recoiled, screaming as memories intertwined and stitched themselves into a beautiful tapestry of who they were. As the brilliance blossomed, Sarah and Jack surged forward into that light. The pain slipped away, replaced with warmth, the kind that reminded them they were not defined by their fears or failures. They were full of potential, story woven in strength. With a final push, they stepped through, and in an instant it was over. The light enveloped them fully, sending tremors of joy cascading through their beings. They weren't just escaping the darkness, they were rising above it. As the brilliance faded, they found themselves back in the living room, sunlight spilling through the windows, softening the starkness of their nightmarish experience. "Mom, we made it!" Jack exclaimed, beaming, disbelief giving way to wonder. Sarah wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight, tears spilling over as relief overwhelmed her. "Yes, we did, together." They looked around, the house imbued with warmth, the shadows merely an echo of what was. They faced each other, shaking yet resolute, knowing they had faced their darkest fears and lived to tell the tale. Moments later, the door swung open, and Ed stepped through, confusion melting into relief. "Sarah, Jack, I thought I lost you. We're here, we're okay," Jack squeaked, joy radiating through his little frame. "Together," Sarah whispered, heart swelling, and stronger than before. As they embraced, laughter broke through the fragile air, lifting them higher. They knew challenges remained, but now they faced them not as prey, but as survivors, emboldened by their truth. And as the sun blazed warmly on their faces, the shadows receded, no longer monsters, but the reminders of resilience and strength forged in the fire of their experience. Now, armed with truth and light, they stepped boldly into a brighter tomorrow. But one last thought echoed, a glimmering ember igniting their spirits. Every ending could prompt a new beginning. And it was in that idea, a brave heart and shared courage, that their true story would always continue. If you loved this conclusion, then you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about the ending, because we want to hear from you.
And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of their support. Let's keep this community thriving together.